police the time and the space to carry out all of their operational activity to determine the motive. It's right that Nottinghamshire police are working with counter-terrorism policing, but it's also fair to say that everybody and all professionals on the front line are keeping an open mind as to what the precise motive might have been.
Do the police know who they're dealing with in terms of the suspect? I mean, do they know who they have in custody, and do they know who the victims are and whether there is any link between them?
There are some things we do know right now. We obviously know that, sadly, tragically, 3 people have been killed. We know that a knife has been used in some of those killings, and a suspect has been arrested on suspicion of murder by Nottinghamshire police.
Goodness gracious me, it's absolutely sickening and shocking, isn't it? Do not go anywhere. We're going to have all of the latest on this. Mark White will join me in just a second. But before we get into that, let's get ourselves up to speed with all the latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Well, let's bring you up to date on events in Nottingham. And in the last few moments, you may have seen police have held a news conference saying they're continuing to search for a motive after 3 people were killed in separate incidents in the early hours of this morning in Nottingham. GBNews understands the prime suspect is, in fact, a West African migrant with a history of violence. 2 of the 3 people killed were students at the University of Nottingham. Both were aged 19 years old, freshers at the university. They were stabbed while walking near the Students' Hall of Residence on Ilkeston Road. Nearby, police say they then found the body of a 50-year-old man on Magdala Road. That individual is believed to have had his vehicle stolen. Police were then called to another street in Nottingham where a van attempted to run over 3 people. And then a 31-year-old man was arrested by police on suspicion of murder. Chief Constable Kate Main explained the suspect's actions.
A man in his 50s was also found dead from knife injuries in Magdala Road by a member of the public. At the moment, we believe that the suspect has stolen this man's vehicle and driven it to Milton Street, where he is then driven at members of the public. We are still in the early stages of the investigation and need to determine exactly what the motives were behind this attack.
Well, let's look at pictures right now from the vigil that's being held for the community to remember those who died in today's attack, university students and the local community at St Peter's Church in the heart of Nottingham. They, earlier on, were laying down flowers, there were candles lit, and of course, they've been paying their respects and kneeling in prayer. The university graduation ball, which was due to take place tonight, has been cancelled as a mark of respect. Well, in other news today, 2 police officers have been served with gross misconduct notices in connection with the deaths of 2 teenagers in Cardiff. Kyrie Sullivan and Harvey Evans died last month, shortly after they were seen on CCTV riding an e-bike, followed by a police van. The police regulator says their conduct doesn't mean disciplinary proceedings will necessarily follow. The COVID inquiry was told today the UK may not have been very well prepared to deal with the pandemic. Lead lawyer Hugo Keith, KC, said the nation was taken by surprise and argued Brexit had distracted the government from improving its strategy to tackle the disease. The inquiry also heard local health chiefs were repeatedly excluded from pandemic planning.
The most you can hope is to give your loved one a good death. And we will forever carry the guilt that our daddy was denied that.
I'm angry. I need questions answered. I'm just still hurt and I'm still upset.
And the time that he needed me most, I wasn't there. And I felt guilty about that, even though it wasn't my fault.
Just some of the thoughts and feeling of those who suffered most during the COVID-19 pandemic, those played in the COVID-19 inquiry today. Now, homeowners are being warned of further interest rate hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. That puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. A mother and her partner have been convicted over the death of a 9-year-old boy. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found at their home in Droitwich in Worcestershire. Carla Scott was found guilty of manslaughter and her partner, Dirk Howell, was convicted of the little boy's murder. And in the United States, former President Donald Trump is due to appear in court in Miami, Florida today. Mr. Trump facing 37 charges of mishandling classified documents, and he's accused of unlawfully keeping US national security data. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. Those are your latest news headlines. You are up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, if you are just tuning in, 3 people have died in Nottingham. It's absolutely horrendous. We've been right across this all day long. Our home and security editor, Mark White, is there, has been there for most of the day. Let's cross to him and get an update. Mark, can you bring us up to speed, please, with the very latest?
Well, the breaking news that we brought you about 40 minutes or so ago was a confirmation from a reliable source that the prime suspect in the murder of these 3 people and the injury of 3 others is a West African migrant with a history of violence. Now, this individual is in police custody at the moment. He was arrested around about 5:30 this morning after the white van that he now, according to police, stole from one of the victims that was murdered in these attacks was used to plough down 3 other people on Milton Street, right in the centre of Nottingham. He was arrested, tasered by armed officers, and he's been brought into custody now. There has been no official confirmation from authorities about the background of this individual. It's fairly early on in the inquiry. You wouldn't necessarily expect that to be the case, but clearly now the pressure will be on, not so much for the police, but certainly the politicians to confirm just what the status of this individual was. Was he here legitimately working in the UK? Was he an asylum seeker? Was he someone who had overstayed his visa? Lots of legitimate questions that need to be answered, because with them come the other questions that need to be answered about the history of violence that we're told is attached to this individual. Was that violence perpetrated in West Africa before he travelled to the UK? And if so, were there enough in the way of checks to determine whether this person was the kind of person who was not a threat to the public, or was these incidents of violence, were they committed while he was in the UK? These are questions we still don't know the answer to at this particular stage. We are still at an early stage in the investigation. It's not been treated as an act of terrorism. It appears doesn't seem to be the kind of evidence that points authorities in the direction of any kind of political link to the events that took place. But counter-terrorism police, the regional counter-terrorism unit, is helping Nottinghamshire police out with its ongoing investigation, as you would understand, given the gravity of the acts that unfolded in the early hours of this morning.
Yeah, Mark, I remember, I think I was pretty much live, actually, when the car went into the gates of Downing Street. You remember that as well. It was very recently. It felt to me within almost kind of minutes, but very quickly indeed, that as, you know, we found out almost instantly, it felt like, right, OK, this is not terror. I remember raising an eyebrow while I was on air because we was immediately getting the feedback that this was a white male that had driven into the gates like this. So how come in that instance it was so quick that information like this was coming out, whereas in this one, we're saying we've got credible sources, etc., but it's not yet being confirmed by the police? Why the delay?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the instance of Downing Street, had that been a very significant incident with multiple fatalities, then there would have been a lot of delving into the background of this individual beyond just the person that you see in the car, and that would take some time, and there would be all kinds of questions around, you know, whether this was a political motivation and looking into contacts, etc. It was clearly, I think, the police were confident enough to say at an early stage that actually the issue was some kind of grievance that this man had with authority over a number of issues that he had quite publicly shared with the officers who had detained him, that told him it wasn't an act or an intended act of terrorism. With this particular man, we don't know whether he has been cooperating with authorities, but regardless of that, the fact that 3 people have been stabbed to death, 3 other people run over, 1 still critically injured, that requires a full level delve into the background of this individual to determine just who he is, who he's connected to, if he has any affiliations and contacts to extremist groups or political movements. All of that will take time and will need to be looked into. There's nothing, it seems, pointing in that direction at the moment, but it doesn't mean that he didn't have a motivation that was still, you know, an absolutely terrible murderous attack. For whatever might have been the particular motivation or reason will only come out in the fullness of time, if and when this individual is formally charged following the events of this morning.
Gracious me, shocking stuff, Mark. Thank you for keeping us up to date, and I'm very confident that as soon as we get an update, Mark will be back with us to bring us up to speed. Kelvin Mackenzie, Matthew Stadland, keep me company till 7. I'll start with you, Kelvin. One of my viewers, Natasha, she has written in saying, you know, former student, used to go out and about, nights out. She's saying that she never would have even have considered anything like that, as most of us would not. You just go out and about, you go home. You do not expect to be in harm's way in this way. It's sickening. Is this the sign, as some people in my inbox are suggesting, that basically Britain is broken, lawless Britain?
Well, I think there are 2 aspects to this. This is a shockingly disturbing case, and the fact that he has turned out to be a West African migrant with mental health issues.
Well, we need the police to confirm that, of course.
No, but well, hold on. Your own guy has confirmed it. So I mean, he got it from a police briefing. Don't worry about that. So let's take that as the first thing. So that is an absolute disgrace, and there will be families who wake up tomorrow morning, right? They haven't got their student kids anymore. They've gone in this terrible attack, and the older guy who was driving the van, he's dead. I mean, it's beyond shocking. This, and there will be a lot of your viewers who will be taking the view that if we hadn't had this migrant, then these people would be alive today. But let's take the wider issue of yours, which I think is the one which says the number of murders in our country. I mean, let's just take the area which I know best, which is London, right? Young Londoners being stabbed to death by other young Londoners carrying huge knives around with them, right? This is a massive change in society in the last 10 years. And what seems to be the case, despite extra heavier sentences for these people, it doesn't seem to be dissuading them. We seem to have I talk about London, it's the only bit I really know, a lawless London, which I do not believe is helped by the way that the judiciary look upon these young killers and say to them, oh, they can't be named for X and Y reasons. I want to know who they are, I want to know what their background is, and I want them banged up. Even when they're young, I want them put away for the safety of the rest of us. And to others to say, you are going off to jail for a huge amount of time, and we are doing it not because we're listening to some prison reform group.
Yeah, Matthew, thoughts?
I think the first thing to say is just to try to gauge the absolute tragedy of this, Michelle. I think it's unspeakable what's happened, and I can't imagine, a relatively new dad myself, I cannot imagine what the parents, the grandparents, the friends of these students are going through, or indeed the older gentleman who's been murdered. So just there are very few words that can do anything like justice to the horror of it. And I feel for not just the family and friends, but also for the people of Nottingham. I don't know the city very well, but I was there last year for an incredible test match, and you want to be reading about Nottingham for the right reasons, not for these horrific reasons. So that's the first thing to say. Thoughts and condolences go out to everyone involved. The second thing to say is that contempt of court kicks in at arrest. A lot of journalists don't know this. They think it kicks in at when someone is charged. It kicks in at arrest. So the last thing I'm going to do is speculate or comment or give any sort of opinion on this arrest. The third thing I'd say about lawlessness more generally in this country, I looked up the stats actually before coming on air, and to my surprise, given the massive cuts that the Tory government has made on the police since they came to power in 2010, they're trying to build back now. But to my surprise, serious crime, if I've interpreted these statistics properly, the serious crime seemed to be down in 2022 compared to pre-pandemic levels. You couldn't properly compare the pandemic because, of course, we were locked up for chunks of that. That surprised me, but as a Londoner, born and bred in West London, my sense now is that there is a creeping lawlessness, that you do see people, whether they're driving motorbikes like maniacs around the place, these delivery bikes, or whether it's drop-offs of drugs in broad daylight. To me, the police haven't quite got a grip on the capital. I can't speak for the rest of the country, and my experiences are anecdotal, but for me, more needs to be done.
Yeah, and if you're watching, you're wondering what this is, you might have just joined us for the first time. The footage that you're seeing, this is exclusive to GBNews. This was an eyewitness supplied us with this footage from a property in Nottingham. What you're seeing here is the suspect being apprehended. That is what we are playing on your screen right now. Are you in Nottingham right now? I'd love to know, how do you feel? What is the sense, the feeling, the emotion in and around Nottingham right now? We spoke then about lawless London. I'm not a Londoner, but it does certainly feel to me like it feels as though that there is this plague of lawlessness, and I have lost count now of the amount of videos. In fact, actually, I've stopped autoplay on my social media because I can't cope with seeing the amount of violence that I seem to be accidentally exposed to when I'm just browsing my Twitter. Yeah. And the amount of people that are charging around with knives in broad daylight, that is the thing that sickens me. And I think, to your point, yes, there's not a lot of bobbies on the beat, and we can debate that till the cows come home. I think there's almost as well, understandably, by the way, I think there's a big fear among members of society now. You saw in France, didn't you, when that guy was going into the playground and people were stood filming him. They were running past him. There were reports saying, eyewitness said she saw a man stab a baby in a pushchair multiple times. I'm like, I beg your pardon? Someone stood there and watched a man knife a baby in a pushchair.
Right, but there is a problem there, isn't there? I mean, have you seen the size of the knives?
I have.
Which are they are literally this long. And there is somebody going mad, and people feel scared. Feel scared. I do understand that. Every so often there is a person of courage who steps forward and takes these people on. So the question is, what could possibly be done about it, right? If it is an explosion, most of it is drug-related, and much of the drugs seem to be carried out by younger and younger people. Why is that? Because the police have great difficulties in actually grabbing hold of these young kids. So the question is, what do we do about that?
Kelvin, I'd be interested to know from you whether you think that the police should be clamping down harder on the people who use drugs. I know people who take drugs casually, take drugs socially. They don't have any fear of being stopped by the police or arrested?
Well, I think that is a very good question, and we're going to ponder it in the break. I want to throw that out to you. What do you think about law and order in this society? I want to pick up on the point that Matthew made as well. Every single one of us wants the person that is responsible for this absolutely disgusting attack in Nottingham today. We want those people to be brought to justice, so we will not say and do anything that would compromise that. So if you're sitting at home screaming at your TV set, Michelle, call it what it is, perhaps is what you might be saying. I can see it coming through in my inbox. I understand your sentiment, but I need to be careful to make sure that we don't do anything that would prevent the person that's done this being brought to justice. None of us would want to be responsible for that. So for now, tell me, do you think crime is getting worse in your area? Do you think there is a sense of increased lawlessness in Britain? Tell me. Do not go anywhere. All of the latest in Nottingham will be brought to you as soon as it happens. I'll see you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the political commentator, Matthew Stadlen. If you have just tuned in, we will bring you all the latest on that horrific situation in Nottingham as it unfolds. Tony has been in touch saying, I'm from Hull, and I served as a policeman from 89 to 2002, and the level of violence by young people has risen phenomenally. He says they have an entirely different mindset today than what they once had. I've got to say, I do feel, I'm not the front line of the law, but I certainly feel that people seem to be more brazen. Like you say, they carry... I don't even know how people walk. When you see people having these knives pulled out of their pants, I think to myself, well, I don't even know how you've managed to walk with those contraptions down yourselves. You asked the question, because we're saying about knife crime. If you're wondering about the details of the Nottingham thing, somebody's been arrested. It's a live legal case. We do not want to jeopardise that in any way. We want that person brought to justice. Hence, we're talking more broadly about law and order. You were saying to Kelvin, you know, when it comes to young people, when it comes to knives, drugs perhaps, drug dealing and all the rest of it is a factor. Do you think that we're hard enough clamping down on drugs, drug taking, drug dealing, whatever?
Well, the issue is, if we were to to really go for... We need a lot more police officers, OK? So Cameron was completely wrong. 100% wrong. He took one of the knives to the costs of running the police force. Totally wrong. Had to be reinstated. We should actually increase the number of police officers. We should increase the number of prisons. And we have got to say that the big scourge of our society, where crime and money meet, is drugs. It's very big money. You don't have to rob banks anymore. Therefore, why don't we actually have more investment in this area? I can't understand why Arishi doesn't say it. I suspect that Starmer will do more in that area, which is absolutely bizarre. And the question is, our society and drugs are intertwined. So you talk, Matthew, about your friends taking drugs. Actually, I'm so old, the only drugs my friend take are blood pressure tablets. But putting that to one side, the truth about the matter is there is a massive middle class.
Yes.
Right, middle class area. They don't give a stuff. And wouldn't it be interesting to know how many lawyers in central London took drugs? And
perhaps even more interestingly than that, how many people in the media? So I'm not very liberal when it comes to drugs. So drugs, as you say, and crime go hand in hand. They are at the rotten core of criminal society in Britain, and no doubt in other countries as well. Now, if I talk about this to my sort of liberal-leaning friends, some of them, not all of them, will say, well, just legalise it. Take the criminals out of it. Legalise drugs, they'll say. I don't think they go that far. And I don't agree with it. I think drugs do damage. And I think it's for the state to say, you can't be putting that stuff in your body. You can't be selling that stuff to other people. The problem is that the police have absolutely got no grip on drugs whatsoever.
They have decriminalised
and it fuels violence. You can't, of course, this comes back to the David Cameron point, but it's a Tory point more generally. Don't forget the Tories have been in power for 13 years. And I think you're right about Starmer. He was talking about the whiff of cannabis on the street. How many streets in London and elsewhere can you smell? You've got a young baby, cannabis is wafting in through into the... You cannot police without police. Community police, visibility, Michelle. You have to have some sort of visible presence. I don't want to live in a police state. You've got to get the balance right. But if you don't have police officers getting to know the community, you're in real trouble.
But a lot of these people, they wouldn't respect. If they saw Bobby on the beat, they wouldn't sit there and go, oh, yeah, I better put that thing. You see, I seen a group of these kids the other day, and it was not in London. You'll tell me if you live in that place where it is, because you'll remember it. They went up to this jewellery shop in the middle of the day, and they've got these axes, and they're smashing the windows, and they're just grabbing stuff, like loads of them just grabbing stuff. People are going into shops just helping themselves, walking around, knifing each other. And I hear people on my show, they'll say, I had a youth worker on here the other day, and he was saying to me, it's because there's nothing to engage the youth. The Tories, he was saying to me,
don't tell me youth clubs is the answer.
Exactly. And I sit there and I just think, give your head a shake.
But we've got to look for answers, Michelle. We have to look for answers, right? And
surely most of the answers come, and this is a wider point and a more dramatic point, I think. Most of the answers come from within families, OK? Because depending on how you're brought up, normally defines, say, 70 or 80% of how it's all going to work out in life. What happens if there are communities within our country which don't have families as the centre?
Well, I would argue, just quickly, if we're going to get onto immigration in that context, that actually, if you look at immigrant communities in this country...
We're looking at one specific
they have some of the strongest family values around.
Hang on, what's the specific community?
Well, my sense of having seen the victims of what seemed to be people who appear to have been caught up in, you know, very young kids, 14, 16, 18 years old. It looks as though the African Caribbean community have been more prevalent in that than, for instance, the Sikh community. Right? It's no use just saying migrants, is it? For instance, anyway, we're not allowed to talk about it ludicrously, I must say.
Well, it's not. Listen, it's not my rules. I don't want to do anything that will get that fella.
That fella will not be freed on the basis of a debate on GB News, Michelle. I'm telling you.
Look, we talk law and order. I'm just moving away from knife crime for a second, if I may, because some of you will be familiar with a story that is. It's in a lot of the press today. It's front page news in some of the newspapers. And I have to say, it is one of the most sensitive, emotive, tragic topics that I personally have ever discussed. So today, 3 children are waking up without their mummy at home. Their mum is in prison, having been sentenced yesterday to serve 28 months. Her crime? To have an abortion. Almost instantly, the outrage has begun. The Women's Equality Party, for example, demanding action and taking to the streets to create it. Politicians speaking out, and some even choosing to use the situation to try and gain votes for themselves at the next election. They speak of archaic laws, 1861, in case you're wondering, and the anger is palpable. Now, let me be clear, and I know that some of you will fundamentally disagree with me, as is your right, but I am unapologetically pro-choice. I believe that a woman should be able to make decisions about her own childbearing, and anyone that's ever been in that position of being pregnant and having the absolute trauma of needing to decide whether to progress or not will know it can be absolutely soul-destroying. It can be one of the hardest decisions any woman will ever have to make. But, and there is a monumental but, there is a clear law in this country, and that is clear that unless in very extreme health-related circumstances, the legal limit for an abortion is 24 weeks. In the case of the lady who has just been jailed, which crucially happened during lockdown, she chose to push her decision beyond the 24 weeks. Having made that decision, she lied and she told abortion services that she was just 7 weeks pregnant. In reality, she was then about 30 weeks. Of course, they then sent the medication, as was the laws then. It was allowed. She took the medication and delivered her stillborn child soon afterwards. That child was then found to be between 32 and 34 weeks gestation. She said not guilty to the offence of child destruction, and instead it was her legal team who suggested a move to the law of 1861, which she eventually pleaded guilty to. Now, taking into account the delayed guilty plea, the judge then had no chance, basically, no choice but to impose a prison sentence, which leads us back to the tragic situation I outlined at the start, 3 children now without their mummy. Now, I feel desperately sorry for the lady involved. I feel desperately sorry for her children, and there are no winners here at all, none. But to all of those that right now today are running around demanding that laws are changed, I ask you this. Do you really want it to be legal for a woman to terminate her pregnancy with no limits? Until when? What? The second she gives birth? The moment she gives birth? The day before? When? For what? Your reason? My choice? My body? My choice? Because I will admit that even though, yes, I am pro-choice, surely there has to be limits. Having no limits at all fills me with dread. Matthew Stadlen, this story is a big one, hugely talked about, deeply emotional. Some people say we shouldn't be talking about it at all because we're being judgmental. What do you make to this case?
I think I agree with pretty much every word in your introduction. I think it's a tragic case all round, desperately sad for the children involved, desperately sad for the mother. I don't know what her motives were. And, of course, desperately sad for the unborn child. There is a law in this country, and if you break the law, you get punished for breaking the law, and it will probably serve as a deterrent to others. But as you say, there are no winners in the family involved. I think abortion is a very tragic thing whenever it happens, but I'm fully aware that I'm a bloke, and that, as you say, it is, up until the legal limit, a question for women and their bodies. But I absolutely think there should be a limit, and I don't feel any great desire to argue with where the limit is at the moment.
Calvin, brief thoughts on you?
Well, the truth about the matter is that that child was almost 9 months old. Well, it was 9 months. The child had almost gone full term. There were quite a lot of cases where that child would have been born.
Full time would be about 40 weeks. So I gave birth at 31 weeks.
Right, well, there we are. So my argument about this, she knew she was deceitful. For complicated personal reasons, she decided that she wanted to kill the child, right? I wanted to abort the child. So my problem about this is not that I don't believe she faced a stiff sentence. My problem is this. She ends up getting, 28 months or something. Right? Honestly, you could literally kill somebody in the street, in a London street, in a Nottingham street, somewhere street, right? And you wouldn't get 28 months.
And that's
I was astonished at the size of the sentence. Now, they have a massive problem. The courts have a massive problem. First of all, he says, if you want to change this, get Parliament to do it. I don't think Parliament will be doing it in a hurry. But secondly, I would like to see other sentences to be guided by this 28 months. If you can get 28 months for this kind of abortion, and there was deceit, and it was definitely a killing, right? What would you get now for a GBH or something? Honestly, these people carrying out really nasty crimes of violence in the streets are not getting anything like that. So I'd like an explanation from the judge why he thought 28 months was suitable.
I would say in answer to that, there's a lot of detail in the sentencing report. He basically compares it to a similar but different case. Previously, he looks at the maximum sentence and all the rest of it. Is a very controversial and very emotional topic. Give me your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.com. Do not go anywhere. When I come back, we'll be looking at that and lawlessness more generally. We'll have the latest on Nottingham, but also the Education Secretary has told us that we need to learn to live within our means. Are we not doing that? Thoughts? See you in 2.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hello there, I am Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Alongside me, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the political commentator, Matthew Stadlen. Lots and lots of you getting in contact about those topics today. I've got to say, there is quite a sense from you guys. I'm asking you, is Britain quite lawless at the moment? Not many of you out there feeling like, no, it's not. Most of you out there feeling like, absolutely, yes, it is. I want your thoughts on some of that. So much empathy for people, the situation in Nottingham. That is really coming in. That abortion one I've just been talking about as well, massively dividing people there. I say be careful what you wish for when you want to remove time limits from abortion. Goodness gracious me. Now, the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, there was a Margaret Thatcher conference yesterday, everybody, so there was. Within it, Gillian Keegan, of course, not Thatcher, she's not back from the dead. Gillian Keegan was saying that she thinks we've got to learn to live within our means. Many people saying, how dare you, dear Tory, patronise us. Other people saying, she's right, clap, clap. What say you, Kelvin?
Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Everybody has to live within their means. I mean, the thing made me laugh the other day as I saw some stats saying that how the wealthy, the rich, had suffered percentage-wise much worse. Look, at the end of the day, people have just received, at the bottom of the round, minimum pay has gone up by 10%. I see there's more people in work now than in history. We're down to 3.8% unemployment, so more families are going out there. It is a nightmare. Energy's a nightmare. Food's a nightmare. I agree. You've got to get on with it. And you're going to have pain, which is what makes me laugh about the trade union leaders who are saying, we are not going to reduce our standard of living. Mate, that game is over. You are going to reduce it. Everybody's going to reduce it. There's lots of pain coming. And if you think this is bad now, wait until Labour get in, when the pain will really start. If you have to have achieved anything in your life, expect to pay even more tax than the Tories are making you pay.
Yeah, look, I think it's common sense, isn't it, that we should live within our means. I'm not someone who goes in for debt. I've been lucky enough never to have been in debt, so I try to steer clear of that. The problem with a Conservative minister, an Education Secretary, saying this, whatever sort of background she comes from, and I think she felt she came from a sort of not overly privileged, hard-working background in Liverpool. But the problem with a Conservative minister saying this is that the Tories have been in power for 13 years, and we know that nearly 11 million people, 11 million of us, are struggling to pay their bills. Now, some of them may be living outside their means, but a lot of them, at Christmas time, you're a mum, Kelvin's a dad, I'm a dad. You know, some of these people are struggling to choose between heating and eating, feeding their kids.
Why would you have heating on in the summer?
No, in the winter, I said, at Christmas time.
Right.
May I just very quickly come back on a couple of things that Kelvin said, because of the big breaking news story, we've been in a rush. Just a couple of things. You did point the finger at the Afro-Caribbean community about crime, and what I'd say to that is how many millions of white people are fueling the drugs trade.
I was just talking about the actual peddling community.
Just a small question, but it's an important one. I know you were saying this for rhetorical effect, but you cannot murder someone. I think people need to know you cannot murder someone in the street and get 28 months. You're going to get a proper sentence.
No, well, manslaughter. Some of the manslaughter adjudications are truly, truly shocking. If you ask GB viewers, I think one of the things that really upsets people is they read a court case because they're not there and they see the sentence at the end of it.
And they feel it's too lenient.
They think it's too lenient. They want to see the judges. Now, the judges themselves have got difficulties because they have been ordered, right, we haven't got the space, do not do this. It's not the judges' fault. Build more jails, make the sentence longer. We seem to be able to build enormous camps for migrants. I can't understand why we don't build them for people who have criminal intent in our country.
Do you know, I think I've got the solution. I think, and any Swallow Braveman you can listen to, take it and claim it as your own. I think that we should mimic what they did back in New York, broken windows theory, where you say, right, enough. We are going to start with the absolute basics. You can recruit this whole new police force. You can even get volunteers. I don't know, some people might even volunteer to start with low-level stuff. And you go right back to basics and you stop and you stamp out all of it. You start with your antisocial behaviour. You get your bobbies back on the beat. You clamp down. If you want to graffiti, if you want to smash your windows, if you want to nick your cars or your carburettors, you're in trouble, you're in prison.
The problem is part of me, absolutely, when I see drug drops in the middle of the day, or I see people risking people's health or sometimes lives by the way they're driving their cars or their bikes that I talked about earlier, their motorbikes. The angry part of me wants to see these people locked up, right? And you go on the motorway, someone came up behind me the other day, 130 miles an hour they came up behind me.
How do you know that was going 130 miles an hour?
If he was doing 120.
Yeah, they overtaken it.
I was estimating. You get a good sense of it, and then he came up behind me. My point is, part of me wants to get these people. The other part of me thinks they go to prison, they come out, they re-offend. Prison is not a very good solution.
Yes, but it's a better solution than having them wandering around on community service. I've
got to say, that's the kind of thing I do. I do go up behind people on the fast lane in the motorway and flash my lights. Get out of the way, get out.
That is shocking.
If you want to meander along, then pack it in and get in the slow lane and get out of my way.
It is not the slow lane, as you will well know if you've ever been on one of those driving courses.
An hour, thank you very much.
It's a shocker.
Get into trouble.
Turn off now.
Look, speaking of people that are in trouble, Donald Trump, he's in trouble, isn't he? He's on his way to court as we speak. Look at that, everybody. Do not say we don't bring you all of it. Look at that.
Where are you, Michelle? Are you behind that guy?
Yeah, Lord only knows which one is Trump. Yeah, that'll be. I'd be the fast one there, look, overtaking, weaving my way around. Michael Stadlin there, I'd be getting right up there, beeping him, get out of my way. Anyway, that is Donald Trump. He's en route to court. Is it a witch hunt? Is it necessary? Give me your thoughts. We'll be looking at that when we come back and more into Do Not Go Anywhere. I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant would be read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through till 7 o'clock tonight. The former editor of The Sun newspaper, Kelvin Mackenzie, keeps me company, as does the political commentator, Matthew Stadlen. Good evening. Welcome back to everybody. We've been bringing you the latest on that horrific situation in Nottingham. If you're waiting to hear more on that, worry not. We will have anything new as soon as it happens. Graham says, I live in Nottingham. I have done for years. It sickens me. He says he feels sick to his stomach now, that horrendous situation which has seen 3 people die, 3 others now injured as well. Donald Trump, though, we've just been talking a lot about law and order in this country, but he is en route to court in Miami as we speak right now. I love these kind of bird's eye images. Part of me, I feel like I'm watching some kind of weird video game or something, but no, this is live. It is in Miami. He, of course, is due to appear in court on federal charges. 37 of them, to be absolutely precise. Some of them are prison sentences of up to 20 years.
Donald Trump is the story that keeps on giving, isn't he, Michelle? And the media, left or right, or bang in the middle, love him, don't they? Because he sells papers, he puts bums on seats in front of televisions. And one thing I will say about this, and of course we can't prejudge the outcome of these proceedings, is that a fundamental tenet of a democracy, and I hope everyone watching GB News today agrees, a fundamental tenet of a democracy is that no one is above the law. This was the bloke who was the most powerful human being in the planet for 4 years, and here he is in these proceedings.
Some people watching this will be shouting at the screens and going, well, some people as well, you say they're not above the law. Some people, they'll be saying, are not above a witch hunt either. Kelvin Mackenzie, what do you think?
Well, the main thing I think is it's hardly a story anymore. The story should be when Trump is not on his way to court.
Yeah.
I mean, he faces about 5 different areas of alleged crime. Now, this one is enormously serious, but how mad would he have to be to have boxes of top-secret files in his shower and in his bathroom and literally hanging around in the ballroom of his home in Florida? So you have to ask whether, to be honest with you, whether Trump is all right at the moment.
Because some people say, don't they, that Trump is stupid. It's the easy thing to say. It's the easy word to reach for. I've never thought he's stupid. He's been running rings around the likes of us for years. But as you say, I mean, if he held these documents in the way that he's alleged to have done, you just think, what on earth was he thinking?
Right. Supposing it was the equivalent over here. Supposing Rishi literally had a box of top-secret files in his bathroom, or in Starmer's front room, or something like that. We would be outraged. The thing about America is different. It is a continent, and unfortunately for America, the situation is that no matter how mad he is, or how much jail sentence he gets, he would still represent probably, I don't know, something staggering like 34% of the voting public of America, because the difference is they do not trust politicians. They have a feeling that all politicians have their hand in the till. We may not distrust them, but we don't believe they're cheaters.
And it is incredible contradictions, because while you can be put to death in some states in America, which I thoroughly disagree with, you can still give an interview right up to the last moment because of freedom of speech. Yeah.
And of course, we've got social media. We live in a social media day and age as well, don't we, these days? Lots of things get said there. Philip says, I wish that Trump would come to the UK and join forces with Boris and Nigel and form a new party. Can you imagine? I don't mean to burst your bubble, Philip, but I don't really think that's going to happen anytime soon. Kelvin?
I'd like to read what the manifesto said.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I doubt that they would agree on it.
Well, you're in luck then, because look, it's almost 7 o'clock. So I tell you what you can do with your night. You can go off and you can read the manifesto and you can see what's in it. You can come back and you can report to us all another night. But look, that is all we have time for. I've enjoyed your company. I've enjoyed yours too. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you at home as well. Today, by the way, this show is 2 years old. Can you believe that? We'll be looking tomorrow night at that. Thank you for supporting us. Can't wait to show you some of the show's best bits. But for now, thank you so much. You do agree with me, lots of you, about broken Britain and maybe broken windows. Is it time to adopt that strategy here in the UK to sort it all out? I say yes. But for now, good night, and I will see you tomorrow.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Another sunny, very warm one tomorrow. Another day where UV and grass pollen levels are going to be high or very high. The pressure's high to the north of the UK. That's why the weather is, by and large, set fair. But we have again seen some thunderstorms and still some downpours rumbling on well into this evening, potentially causing some further disruption across the west of Scotland and the west of Northern Ireland, but fading and most places becoming dry and clear. The easterly breeze bringing a fresher feel to the east overnight, a more comfortable night for sleeping, but in the west another sticky one, another warm, another humid one. Temperatures holding up at 16, 17 Celsius in towns and cities, so a difficult night for sleeping. Another fine, very warm summer's day to come though for the vast majority on Wednesday. The small chance of seeing a heavy shower breaking out, most likely over the Highlands of Scotland, but the vast majority dry and sunny, maybe a bit misty around some coasts. The easterly breeze making temperatures here in the low 20s, but for most places, temperatures a degree or so down on today's, but still getting into the mid to high 20s pretty widely. Still a pretty warm day for the time of year. Small chance of still the odd shower here and there breaking out late in the day, but most places dry and fine through Wednesday evening and indeed into Thursday. May turn a little misty and murky in one or two spots, and always the possibility of some of that mist returning to the east coast with a bit of an easterly breeze here. Again on Thursday, perhaps a shower breaking out, maybe even a thunderstorm here and there, but they'll be pretty isolated. The vast majority staying dry, sunny and pretty warm, although again temperatures just a degree or so down, but still in the mid-20s pretty widely. So warm this week, staying fine and sunny. As we go towards the weekend, just an increasing chance of seeing some showers in the west.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.